Hello and welcome to Patrick Come Lately Talk Radio. This is Stefan, your host, British by birth, American by choice. The Founding Fathers crafted some remarkable documents that led to the creation of a great country founded on liberty and self-reliance. I have lived in the Euro-socialist nightmare, and I'm doing what I can to return this country to the vision that the Founding Fathers gave us. We need to strive to rebuild that shining city on the hill, for without us, the world has nowhere to turn for freedom. For the next hour, I will be presenting news, views, and guests that help keep the true spirit of America alive. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. This is Stefan, your Patrick Come Lately, British by birth, American by choice, welcoming you to another episode of Patrick Come Lately Talk Radio. So whenever you're listening to the show, good evening, good afternoon, good morning, welcome, and we've got lots to talk about today. The show is coming to you from Southwest Florida, as has been my want for the last few weeks. Of course, last week it came from the Patrick Come Lately home studios, but we're back on the road again. So we're back down in Southwest Florida. Nice and warm down here, a little bit of rain now and again, but summer's coming, so it's going to get hot here. Anyway, but enough of the weather, enough of where I am. Let's get straight into the news, and I want to start tonight kind of the usual format. I'm going to start with my weekly summary series of short topics where I'll give my comments as to why I think these are important. So Patrick Come Lately's weekly summary, and the first topic here is the fact that the Department of Injustice actually spent $600,000 to commission a report by the University of Michigan. They have asked the University of Michigan to look at social media and to basically look at 4 right-wing sites and 3 Muslim sites. And they are labeling these as right-wing extremist sites. Now, isn't it strange? So 4 right-wing sites, but only 3 Muslims. Do we have right-wing people going out every day and beheading people? Do we have Muslims going out and threatening, trying to kill people who are exercising their First Amendment rights? I don't think so. So why would we spend more time on the right-wing extremists? Well, this report, supposedly this money's been invested, but the actual investigation hasn't started yet. It starts in September and it lasts for 1 year, and it'll finish just before the next election. Is that a coincidence? I don't think so. I don't believe in coincidences. I agree with that other great talk host, George Norrie. Let's think about the IRS in the year before the 2012 election. What were they doing? They were exercising their power and leaning on these conservative groups so that they couldn't operate. And now we're going to be leaning on other conservative right-wing groups to prevent them from operating. This regime is out of control. And to all those GOP senators and congressmen who said, well, we really have to have the Patriot Act because it's safe and it's good and it's going to keep us safe. Is it really? It's going to keep us safe from what? The government? No way. Can we trust the government? Oh, and by the way, talking about trusting the government, we just found out this week that the FBI is spying on us. Yes, so let's go to the next topic in the weekly summary. Yes, it has just been released by diligent research, by following certain information available about aircraft flying around with certain tail numbers and then tracking them back to companies which turned out to be shell companies for the government. Turns out that the FBI has been flying these small planes over cities, often in large circular patterns, collecting data supposedly for specific investigations. But some of the data being collected was video. Some of it was cell phone type data. In other words, maybe not the calls themselves, but the usual thing, as they call it, the metadata. In other words, phone identification, and in many cases for tens of thousands of people, Americans. All of this done without any judicial oversight. That is right. Without any judicial oversight. In other words, no warrants, because they were videoing people who just happened to be walking around, and if you walk around in public, you can be subject to being viewed by the FBI. Well, folks, when we look at that example of how the IRS was used to exert power on conservative organizations, when we see the same thing happening again with the Department of Injustice, when we see the same thing happening with the EPA and other government departments being used to coerce, to intimidate conservatives, do you really trust this government? And then, for one of the things that they are really supposed to do, they're supposed to keep us safe. So in order to do so, they set up the Department of Homeland Security, which has a subsection in it called the TSA, which is supposed to keep us safe on planes. A recent report came out, and 96%, 96, 95, depending on how you calculate it. But anyway, or to get more precise, 67 out of 70 attempts to smuggle false weapons, to smuggle bombs, not real ones, but dummy bombs on, were successful. 67 out of 70 attempts to get things past TSA that should not be allowed to go past TSA were successful. Now remember, as far as these terrorists are concerned, they only need to be successful 1% of the time. We have to be successful in finding them and blocking them 100% of the time. TSA ain't helping with that, because 96% of the time they are failing. 96%, that's absolutely unbelievable. And then, but it is Washington, of course, what happens. So the acting head of TSA gets moved sideways. That's right, he got reassigned to a new job, because nobody in Washington gets fired for incompetence. No, Washington looks after its own. Okay, folks. Let's go to the next item, because now it's getting really interesting. I'm sure you will have seen on TV the videos of a recent speech that King Barry gave, in which he said he's increased America's standing in the world. So since he came into power, or when he came into power, America was way down in the bottom, just above Russia, and now they're back at the top of the list. Okay. What's this guy been smoking? Did he take Air Force One and fly to Colorado again? 'Cause something's affecting his brain. The United States is the most respected country on earth. Unbelievable that he can even think to say that. Well, so let's have a look. The New York Times, the New York Slimes, I should say, because I think that's the best way to describe them, and let's face it, not the most right-wing of news outlets, had this headline: Iran's nuclear stockpile grows, complicating negotiations. With only 1 month left before a deadline to complete a nuclear deal in Iran, international inspectors have reported that Tehran's stockpile of nuclear fuel increased about 20% over the last 18 months of negotiations, which really undercuts the regime's contention that the Iranian program had been frozen during that period. In other words, they were lying to us again. What else do we expect? So, does that mean that the United States is more respected? Tehran's thumbing their nose at us. Well, but maybe Russia has more respect for us. Well, Vladimir Putin recently recriminalized any reporting about Russian military deaths during peacetime. So it's now a criminal offense to report on that. Most likely to cover up the fact that Russians are fighting in the Ukraine. And on top of that, a little mention, they're probably using mobile crematoria to burn bodies so that they don't have bodies to bring back home and that people can talk about, because they want to hide that they're fighting in the Ukraine. Oops, so Vladimir Putin doesn't have very much respect for us. Well, then it must be the Middle East, because there all these Muslim nations are so thankful as to how friendly Khalif Hussein is towards the Muslims, that they must be really pleased with him. And yet, when he invited 6 Gulf nations to attend a summit at Camp David, most of them said thanks, but no thanks. And that included the King of Saudi Arabia, the heads of Oman, the United Arab Emirates, even the King of Bahrain. The King of Bahrain thought his time would be better spent attending a horse show with Queen Elizabeth. Now, Lizzie is a very nice lady, but you'd think if they really respected the US, then they would have come to the summit. So we'll have to cross them off. So that doesn't leave a lot of people respecting us. What about Israel? Well, we all know in Israel that his approval ratings are almost down in single digits, so we can't include that. What about Europe? Well, I don't think they think very much of him either. So why does he think he has this great respect built up? Because he ended these 2 ground wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, and that gets him respect? Well, what about the Taliban surrounding a police compound in Helmand after killing 19 policemen and 7 soldiers in an ongoing siege? Government forces had launched an operation against the insurgents in March in hope of reducing the impact of the Taliban's annual warm weather offensive. However, since the offensive was launched, attacks across the country have intensified, spreading government forces thin. As well as the usual guerrilla-style tactics of fight and run, they've also stepped up suicide attacks and in some areas targeted assassinations and kidnappings. Okay, folks, sounds like we're not getting much respect in Afghanistan. And last week, that crazy Josh Ernest, or as we maybe call him Baghdad Josh, said the United States is not going to be responsible for securing the security situation inside of Iraq. The UN has reported has found a 70% increase in the flow of foreign fighters since 2014, as well as over 25,000 individual combatants traveling to jihadi conflicts from more than 100 countries. And of course, they're going to support militant groups like ISIS and Al-Qaeda. So it sounds like these extremists don't have much respect for King Barry either. Well, so it sounds like he's delusional, ideologically blinded, intellectually stunted. So how are we going to get him back to reality? It could take a team of psychiatrists. And hat tip here to Terry O'Brien and her show where she mentioned this. Can we bring him back to reality? And she says, it's ironic that Obama, a man who embraces an ideology that has been demonstrated for over 100 years to be an absolute failure in practice, and it's an ideology that guarantees poverty and misery for anybody unfortunate to live under it, he justifies his love fest with the Castro brothers, who've been inflicting that aforementioned misery on the people for nearly 60 years, using a cliche about doing the same thing and expecting a different result. This guy is absolutely out of touch with reality. And as Terry O'Brien, a fellow host on Red State Talk Radio, mentions, is it time to face the fact not only do we have a communist in the White House, but a batshit crazy communist? She asked the question, is he clinically insane? Well, after the break, one more thing that shows really how bad off we are with having that guy in the White House. So stick with me, folks. I'll be back.
You can lose 10, 20, 30 pounds or more with Maximum Slim's first ever rapid weight loss guarantee. Today, you get Maximum Slim, an advanced fat and carb blocker, absolutely risk-free. The all-natural ingredients in Maximum Slim are a powerful weight loss combination. The Maximum Slim formula turns your body into a fat-burning furnace that supercharges your weight loss. Advanced fat and carb blocker stops the breakdown of sugar so your body doesn't store it as fat. Today, you'll get both of these products absolutely risk-free with no obligation. Only pay shipping. There are no expensive meal plans or exhausting DVDs. Just take Maximum Slim twice a day. It's fast, simple, and now it's guaranteed. Look, you can start losing weight today or not. Go back to your high school days and wear your favorite jeans again. Guaranteed. Call now and get both weight loss formulas free. Call 800-451-0228. 800-451-0228. That's 800-451-0228.
Doc, you gotta give it to me straight.
All right.
'Cause I'm dying here. I mean, take a look at this letter from the IRS.
Oh, my.
This is killing me, Doc. I tell you, it's killing me.
Cheer up, my friend.
Huh?
The tax doctor is here. My diagnosis tells me that you're going to be just fine.
Really?
The tax doctor will not rest until we find you the best possible tax settlement.
Really, Doc?
Guaranteed.
If the IRS claims you owe them $10,000 or more in business or personal back taxes, call a tax doctor right now. We could save you up to 75% if you qualify. Guaranteed or you pay nothing. Call right now for free details.
800-917-8546. 800-917-8546. 800-917-8546. That's 800-917-8546.
This is Patrick Come Lately Talk Radio, coming to you live via the internet, via rebroadcast on WRSDB, the Red State Talk Radio Network, or from the recordings at archives.patrickcomelately.us. Looks like that's working.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth.
Okay, folks, I think we had some technical problems there, as usual. I dislike this hotel, but haven't got much choice, unfortunately. So apologies to you in the chat room. If you missed a bit of a gap there, I'll have to fill it in. But some technical problems, but I think everything has loosened up now. So those of you that are in the chat room, let me know if everything's coming through okay. I'd like to say hi to Mary, who has joined us, a listener from way back, and nice to see you, Mary. And then, of course, Rex and Paul, our regular listeners, are there, so nice to see you there. I want to go on with my weekly summary, and we were talking about the delusional things that our dear leader has said over the last week. But here's something that came up, and I don't know if I've mentioned this before, but I was reminded about it, and I really think we do need to look at this, because I think it speaks really volumes about the mindset of this a-hole that's in the White House. And this particular topic is about Taya Kyle, the widow of the SEAL sniper Chris Kyle. And of course he came home after having spent many years being deployed to hostile regions, and then he was murdered in cold blood by a person that he was trying to help. So he had a confirmed 160 kills under his belt. It put him at the top of an elite list of military heroes. The Pentagon leaned on him to provide protection for thousands of troops on an unknown number of missions. So after he was murdered at the hands of a former Marine with severe PTSD, you would think that Tayo might get a phone call or even a letter from the White House in order to honor her husband's years of selfless service to this country. Well, Khalif Hussein was very quick to invite the parents of a deserter, Bo Bergdahl, to a Rose Garden ceremony to celebrate his release. Highly controversial, and that was, he met with them beforehand. He had that meeting. I mean, that must have been an hour, a couple of hours. He couldn't even pick up the phone and spend 2 minutes of his time offering his condolences to the wife of a real American hero. Folks, does that not tell you exactly what this president thinks of our military? Well, and what can we do about it? All we can do is wait. He's not gonna be impeached because the GOP isn't strong enough for that. So what do we have to do? We have to wait till the next election. So here's our next topic. The next election is coming up, and we have more and more GOP candidates entering the fray. Now, a lot of the left and some of the right mainstream media is sort of getting all in a tizzy about the fact that there are so many GOP people, because they say, oh, well, this is going to be bad for the GOP, and they're going to have all these people, and it's going to be... Well, I disagree with that. I think this is a very healthy situation, in actual fact. You have to remember that in this country we have the primary system. If it was if we had elections like they have in the UK or in Europe, very different. But here you have the primary election. And that, I think, is a strength in allowing all of these candidates to come forward and to debate. So we can listen to all of them, we can judge for ourselves, and we can choose one. Now, there are going to be some issues about the states where we have this winner-take-all for the primary elections. I'm not sure whether that is 100% right. I think it might be fairer, especially when you have a large number like this, to spread it out amongst, the top 5 or whatever. But even if you just did it totally proportionally, it would limit it to a certain number, and it would keep a certain group in the fray, and others would drop out. With the winner take all, it's kind of sudden, so I'm not sure if that's quite right. But by having such a large group, I really think that one of the good things is that there is less money for each individual. And we all know, while the Supreme Court has said that we can't remove money because that's a First Amendment right, we can't remove money from the election cycle. If we can spread it out amongst a lot of people, that means we've not got 1 or 2 people fighting each other with the money, with their negative ads. And also, by spreading the money out, even if one person is more successful in getting money for their campaign, they'll have to spread it out against multiple candidates, which means it'll have less effect. So instead of doing that, they will have to spend their money in promoting their own platform, their own programs, instead of going for a lot of negative ads. And I think that's definitely one of the positive things about this whole situation. So, and thinking about it, this actually ties into something that I presented in my shows. One of the I think this was in 2011, leading up, in 2012, leading up to the 2012 election. And this was the suggestion that we should have a national primary day. Instead of having primaries across the whole country on different days, we should just have a national primary day. Right now we're getting to things like Super Tuesday, where a number of states all have their primaries on the same day. Let's have a national primary day. Now, I've heard one of the arguments for not doing that is that by having the primaries spread out, it gives some of the smaller states the opportunity to participate because they have debates, they have discussions, they have retail politicking there, especially in Iowa, obviously. But my suggestion was, yes, have a national primary day, but then hold a series of debates, ideally a large number of debates, each representing 3 or 4 states. If we did 3 states, we could have 17 debates, and that would give about 8 of them during the week, 8 at the weekend, and actually we would have 17 times 2 because we'd have to have it for the Republicans and the Democrats. This would, number one, give the candidates an opportunity to make the occasional mistake, because there's, if you have 17 debates, you make a mistake in one, you've got another, maybe not another 16, but you've got another 10 or 5 to come back and show that it was a mistake. And 17 debates would be 50 states plus DC plus Puerto Rico. Each state, we could have 3 states represented in each debate and focus on some of their issues as well as handling generic ones. So it was a suggestion I made 4 years ago, because it hasn't flown yet, but let's keep at it. Who knows, that might be one way to go. Okay, folks, I'm going to take a quick break here. I've got some new commercials coming up next week. They're not here quite now. So instead, what I'm going to do is, I think we're going to play some music, and I will be back after this nice music about taking our country back, because that's what we have to do in this coming election. And hopefully...
Taking my country back, putting it back on the right track. Corrupt politicians making bad decisions, we all had enough of that. If our founding fathers could talk today, I could hear them say, take your country back, my friend. You gotta take your country back. Get out of my way or slip on this train. I'm headed to my Washington house to let those suckers know on election day I'm gonna kick most of them on out. And shout no more high taxes. We want a free market system. We don't like socialism. See, we believe in capitalism. And we love our children, and we love this nation. So let's protect our borders and protect our freedom. I'm taking my country back, putting it back on the right track. Corrupt politicians making bad decisions, we all had enough of that. If our founding fathers could talk today, I can hear them say, take your country back. Oh yeah, son, you gotta take your country back. Take your country back. Oh yeah, you gotta take your country back. Now Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, and John Quincy Adams too. If you could go to Washington one more time, what would you say or do? I'd say no more high taxes. We want a free market system. We don't like socialism. See, we believe in capitalism. And we love our children. And we love this nation. That's why we wrote the Constitution, to protect our freedom. So start taking your country back, putting it back on the right track. Now corrupt politicians making bad decisions, we all had enough of that. If our founding fathers could talk today, I could hear them say, take your country back right now. Yeah, you gotta take your country back. I'll take your country back right now. Son, you gotta take your country back. Oh, take it back. Take it back. And put it back on the right track. Oh, take it back. Take it back. And put it back on the right track. And put it back on the right track. Oh yeah, God help us take our country back and put it back on the right track. Yeah, put it back on the right track. Oh, take it back, and put it back on the right track. Oh yeah, take it back. Oh, take it back and put it back on the right track. Oh, take it back, take it back, take it back, take it back and put it back on the right track.
Yes, take our country back. That's what we're going to do, and hopefully we will be able to choose the right person to help us do that. So let's go on to our next topic in the weekly summary. And that's, let's have a look at the polls. It's very early yet, but obviously they're running all sorts of polls and things are going up and down and up and down. But interestingly enough, in the most recent one, Marco Rubio is way up ahead, and Scott Walker, and surprisingly enough, Ben Carson, which for, let's say, for a non-politician is quite amazing. Then we have just in the double digits, Jeb Bush, Mike Huckabee, and then Rand Paul and Ted Cruz in the single digits. There are many others behind that, of course, all in the single digits. But it's interesting, I think, right now. I think Marco Rubio, Scott Walker, Jeb Bush are going to play a role. Rand Paul apparently is doing very well in New Hampshire, but of course that's only one state, but it's a good state to start off with. So I think right now it's still a very tight race, and it will continue to be tight until well into the primary season. So I think we're going to have lots of interesting things to talk about in the coming year. So let's go on and have one more other topic. And this other topic is more good news, and this news is about the fact that the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals actually upheld the injunction that the U.S. District Court in Texas had given against the Obama administration's executive action on immigration. I've talked about this on the show before, and the immigration executive order was going to allow people to stay in the country and give them work permits, and that the regime has been taken to court by a number of states saying that this is going to have such an impact on them and it's unconstitutional, etc. The interesting thing was that the regime tried to have this blocked on the fact that it should be limited to the states that were bringing the lawsuit, and of course not all 50 states did bring the lawsuit. And also the appeals court found that the states had sufficient legal grounds to bring the lawsuit. In other words, the regime was trying to say that they didn't have standing, as the legal term says. Well, we're going to come. This is an argument they often try to use, and the appeals court said no, they have sufficient legal grounds to bring the lawsuit, and the administration was unable to show that it would be harmed if the injunction remained in place. So exactly, why would the administration be harmed? Now, of course, the other thing is that I don't think the judges were very pleased that basically the regime had also lied to the court, because contrary to what the federal government lawyers told the court, the Obama administration had already begun granting expanded employment authorizations to people that came to this country illegally. So they said they hadn't done it when they had. And then, after the injunction was issued, the Obama regime approved 3-year deferred action grants for undocumented immigrants. So basically, they ignored the court. I mean, this is just unbelievable how out of control this regime is. Now, the Department of Injustice could appeal this ruling on the emergency stay to the full appeals court, but they think it's more likely that the administration would skip this conservative court and ask the Supreme Court to allow the programs to proceed. Well, I wonder. I doubt it. I doubt that that's going to happen. And some bad news, or some sad news really, was the fact that the Duggar family, Josh Duggar, one of the children in the Duggar family, who are well known from the TV program 19 Children and Counting, a supposedly very religious family. And yet Josh Duggar, it turns out, had been inappropriately touching young girls. And this was released, and these were sealed records, sealed juvenile records that were not supposed to be released. And I think there's going to be some interesting discussions here about whether it was legal and whether anybody could be taken to court on that. What he did was not correct, but the fact that it was released, and the police chief and the city attorney that released it said this was due to a FOIA request, although the law of that state actually says sealed juvenile records are exempted from any FOIA requests. So this is, appalling that they would disregard the law in this way as well. The mainstream media have been trumpeting about possible problems for GOP candidates who had their pictures taken with the Duggar family, including Josh, who is the one that did this when he was a minor. But they had the pictures taken well before anything was known about this problem. And so they're trumpeting this about possible problems, trying to make it as bad as possible for any of the GOP candidates that had their pictures taken with them. But isn't that funny? Because Slick Willie gets accused of rape, and that gets swept under the rug. I mean, this is just absolutely disgusting. Okay, folks. Now I want to talk about something from the other side of the pond. As you know, I like to bring topics from the UK sometimes to warn us of what may be happening here. Well, listen to this absolutely crazy stuff. So, this topic, the headline is "Don't Harm Your Rapist." So one of the things that in the UK, obviously, we don't have the same fundamental freedoms in the UK as the rebels on the other side of the Atlantic in the colonies set up for themselves. And one of them is the fundamental right of keeping and bearing arms, which has been taken away in the UK a long time ago. So they are so restrictive, basically it is very difficult to own a gun. The very least you can have is for hunting, for sporting purposes, but anything more than that, forget about it. So if you happen to be attacked by one of the bad guys, you have to be careful, though, that you don't do anything to injure your attacker in return. For example, if you go to the Ask the Police website, where they have a frequently asked questions, and the question in this FAQ is, are there any legal self-defense products that I can buy? And the first sentence in the reply to that states, the only fully legal self-defense product at the moment is a rape alarm. And a rape alarm supposedly is a whistle or something that alerts the authorities that something bad is going on. So if somebody comes and starts hitting you, starts fighting you, all you can do is whistle. But it goes on. It says you must not get a product which is made or adapted to cause a person injury. Possession of such a product in a public and in private in specific circumstances, in other words, your home is not your castle in the UK, is actually against the law. So it seems that care for violent offenders outweighs the rights of potential victims to be safe. I mean, can you believe this? And the COPS website specifically states, that spraying mace and pepper spray are out of the question because they could cause injury to the mugger or rapist. I mean, seriously, folks, can you really believe that? My old home country is absolutely crazy, right? But the moral of the story is very obvious. When you fail to secure or just relinquish enough of your fundamental rights to Big Brother, give them an inch and they will always take a mile. So remember, folks, if you want to elect officials who are prone to banning guns, take a look across the Atlantic, because your future is already on display over there. Okay, folks, it's time for the last segment of the show. We're going to start that off with a commercial. I will be right back.
Patriot come lately. British by birth. American by choice. Just like the Founding Fathers. The voice of the conservative resistance.
Every day, millions of Americans grow more concerned about the future of our great nation. The truth is, over the last century, a small but powerful collectivist movement known as progressivism has debased our politics, our culture, and our currency. We're just a small step from falling into 1,000 years of darkness, as Ronald Reagan warned. Friend, this is Pat Boone with an important free offer on a hot new book called The Great Withdrawal by Craig Smith and Lowell Ponte. This new book explains how we, the people, can end this fatal detour into big government and get back on the path of faith and freedom charted by our founders. Call now for a free copy of the hot new book called The Great Withdrawal.
Call now for your free copy. 800-978-3901. 800-978-3901. 800-978-3901. That's 800-978-3901.
Owe $10,000 or more to the IRS that you can't pay? Call now for immediate help. At the Tax Relief Line, we help people just like you. If you take on the IRS alone, you could be facing levies, liens, even wage garnishments, personal or business tax issues. If you owe $10,000 or more to the IRS, call now and see if you can pay less. They can freeze your bank accounts, even garnish your wages. Call the Tax Relief Line now for immediate help. Our expert team of tax professionals will negotiate your tax problem and deal with the IRS for you. If the IRS is threatening you with levies, wage garnishments, or seizing your assets, call now and see if you can pay the IRS less.
888-789-5043. 888-789-5043. 888-789-5043. 888-789-5043.
This is Patriot Come Lately Talk Radio, keeping the spirit of America alive, a proud member of the Red State Talk Radio Network. And this is Stefan, your Patrick Come Lately. We're into the last segment of the show. And by the way, apologies if you are in the chat room. My chat room is frozen, so I can't participate in the chat room for some reason. I tried typing some things in. It doesn't seem to take. So I don't know if you're still out there. So, hi to Rex and Paul and Mary, who is a listener from way back, and just glad to see her. So hopefully you're still there listening. My apologies for the technical difficulties earlier. We were talking about the UK and how you're not allowed to defend yourself, pretty much. But you think it's only the UK? Europe can just as bad, and regular listeners will know I also have a connection to the Netherlands. They're just as crazy over there as well. Recently, a burglar had finished sorting out what he wanted to take with him on the ground floor, and armed with a large knife, he went upstairs to see if there was anything to his liking in the bedrooms. Now, he may have realized or may not have realized, but the folks were still at home. So when he got to the top of the stairs, he encountered the man of the house. And the man of the house, of course, being a man, felt he had to defend his wife and 2 children. The burglar managed to wound both parents, but got clobbered himself pretty hard. Now, according to this news piece, he took off, but he was later arrested. The public prosecutor let it know, though, he was not only looking into this burglary crime and what this burglar was doing, but was also investigating the parents, and especially the father, to find out if they had not exceeded the appropriate amount of violence when defending themselves. Now, don't ask me what the appropriate amount of violence is in that case. I'll be very honest with that. In my case, the appropriate amount is 0.357. Yes. And straight to the body mass or straight to the head, either will do what's needed, and whether it's 1 or 2 bullets, they're both going to work. Of course, obviously, that wouldn't fly in over on the other side of the Atlantic. The Dutch Minister of Justice apparently, a couple of years ago, said people should shout boo if they were attacked in the street. I don't know what it is about these Euro-socialists, but folks, when you hear this sort of thing, now you know why Patrick came lately to get away from all this nonsense. Let's see, how are we doing for time? Well, we've got just a couple of minutes, and what I'd like to talk about is the floods in Texas. My sympathy to everybody that suffered losses there. The left, of course, tried to pin hypocrisy on Ted Cruz, because Ted Cruz came out and said, yes, we need federal aid in response to the devastating floods in his home state of Texas. And of course the left immediately said, but he voted against the federal aid for the other states when Sandy occurred. Well, folks, Ted Cruz clarified the situation. The reason he did that was specifically because he wanted to vote against all of the pork that had been put into the Sandy bill. And we know that in Washington, that's what they do. They add all this pork. That there were things in that bill that had absolutely nothing to do with Sandy. So, folks, he wasn't hypocritical. He was just doing the right thing. And I'm sure that if they'd passed a bill to give federal aid to Texas and it had lots of pork in it, he too would have voted against that, because that's not the way we should do things. But anyway, we've come to the end of the show. Once again, apologies for any issues with the technical things for my live listeners. I will try and clean this up before this goes out. Do come back hopefully next week. Hopefully no problems next week. I'm going to try and get a better room again where the signal is better. I don't know whether it's the network or whether it's my computer this time, because it really was acting up. Network seems to be pretty good here. They've just upgraded, so that is good. But anyway, so I look forward to talking to you next week. It's time to say ta-ta for now, and thanks for coming, folks. Please do come back next week, hopefully without problems. Thank you for listening to the show. I hope that you enjoyed tonight's topics. Whether you listened live, to a recording, or to a rebroadcast, I appreciate the time you share with me. We need to spread the message of liberty far and wide. So please tell your friends and family about the show. Thank you for helping to keep the beacon of hope burning. This is Stefan, your Patrick Come Lately, signing off. God bless America, and remember, L3, long live liberty.